I'm Phil Hunter. I'm one of the elders, your elders, LOPC elders, for the mission team. And this is Juanita Kaiser. She is the other elder for the mission team. And we welcome you here this morning, hopefully to answer some of your questions and concerns about what we're reading in the newspapers and how they're impacting our partners, the partners that we have here at LOPC. In getting ready for this, I found this quote on the the Presbyterian Church USA website. And I think it's critical to point out that Christ tells us we have an ethical responsibility to engage in issues of social justice. So we may feel differently as individuals on how we might want to look at social justice, but I think we all are called to take action on these issues of social justice. So what I'd like to accomplish today is to help you think through what you as an individual want to do in the situation that we're faced with. We're going to go through a quick agenda here. Juanita will walk us through what the objectives are. I'll make a couple introductions. We'll have a brief overview of what the impact is to the partners. And let me state that it's a brief overview. The idea in the overview is not to give you the answers, but to give you the thoughts to create the questions that we will answer. So we have a panel of distinguished people up here. These are other members of the mission team here at LOPC. And what we have done in the mission team, we have taken a member and given them an assignment to follow one of our mission partners. So you can see by the names above them, these are what we call the liaisons. So this is a point of contact for that mission partner to LOPC and a point of contact for LOPC back to the mission partner. So hopefully we can get better communications going with our mission partners. This has been a design that we've had I've been on the team now for 10 years, and this design was even before I got on the team. So I think it works real well, but you might have an interest in one of the partners, like Monument Crisis Center. Jim Boyd's the go-to person on that. And of course, if you have more than one, you have more than one name that you can call on to find out what's going on, what you can do to get involved and all. And then we'll answer as many questions as we can. Again, I want to spend most of the time answering your questions. I have no idea what your source of information that prompts these questions, so I didn't think we could address all your questions. We want you to ask the questions, then we'll try to address them. And we'll just end with a brief kind of where do we go from here? We've thought through some ideas, and hopefully you'll like these suggestions.
So what we're going to do is inform you about what actions you can take with government representatives. We have papers here that will tell you some scripts, the addresses, and then we're going to send around a sign-up sheet that will let you...
I'm the Vanna White. These are the scripts on the back, and here are the addresses. So we got multicolored paper.
And we want you to not just write what we're saying. Those are suggestions. You put it in your own words from your own heart. And so you'll have this electronically from us if you check the box on the sign-in sheet. And what we want to do is begin to determine what positions LOPC should advocate for. And that'll be formed, with this group and how the pastors feel about moving forward on that.
So before I get into the first one, I want to again introduce the people up here that will be answering those questions. I also want to point out that we have 9 members up here. We actually have 12 organizations that we follow here at LOPC. And the good news is, when we reached out to the 3 that are missing and said, how have the recent headlines impacted you? Those 3 basically said, we don't have any impact at this point. Everything's good. So I think we can rejoice in that these mission partners are still full steam ahead, still doing the service that they have. I think you can see that the 9 up here have a story to say that they are being impacted. So we want to start alphabetically with Afluna, and just want to state there that the U.S. historically has been the largest supporter of the UN Refugee Agency, and of which all Palestinians get most of, if not all of their support. That funding from the U.S. to the UN ended in January of 2024. Let me make sure you understand, 2024, before the election, that got stopped because of some alleged issues that were going. All those alleged issues have been debunked, but the aid has still stopped. Since the incursion in October 2023, The U.S., through USAID, which is a different organization, has supported the Palestinians with over $600 million. But that got stopped, and that funding was going for all the necessities that the people in the Gaza Strip needed. Again, it ceased. The bottom line to all this is the Afluna school and their vocational training facility has been destroyed. It's been leveled. It's been bombed. It doesn't exist anymore. Founding members and their families have been killed. Just one comment. They have been killed. People still exist. We still are in contact with people that were with at Afluna, but the structure is no longer in existence. But some of the people we're still in contact.
Church World Services. This is an organization that started at World War II to resettle displaced refugees. So it's been going on, 81 years? And they have a new location in Walnut Creek that now has been shuttered. They provide services for legal asylum. All the people that are here have been brought here legally. They have about 1,300 families in the Bay Area, 800 of which are Afghan. And you'll recall that some of the Afghans helped us during the war and they were brought over. And about 500 families are Ukrainian. And there's a smattering of Central American families. And 90% of the people that are here are children. So these families are in limbo. They were brought here, told they would have funding for a while, and now they're here, and what's going to happen? So they're no longer accepting any new arrivals, and the local staff has been cut to 7 from 28, and I think a couple of them are part-time. And then the services are reduced to immigration, legal services, anti-trafficking. When you go to the location that still has a lease until May, there are canvas bags lined up. They're called go bags, and when they find usually a woman or a girl that's been trafficked, they're go bags. They give them to them so that they can run away. So they support domestic violence support, health and housing navigation. And they're looking for things like diapers and menstrual pads and very simple things. Anything will do.
The Congo, as you know, we've had a Congo team here for many, many years. They focus on education, training, trauma healing, and advocacy support. The DRC had been the largest recipient of USAID of any country in the world, receiving over $900 million. Now, let me put this in perspective. U.S. government aid all over the world is over $70 billion. And most of that aid is military aid. But when we talk about aid that goes for humanitarian purposes, this is what the USAID has been doing, and the Congo, up until recently, has been the largest recipient of any country in the world. These funds have been, had been provided to support over 350,000 children that were in conflict zones. It also helped with health projects, life-saving humanitarian assistance, economic growth, and protection of the environment. The bottom line for the Congo is that with less economic aid, which has been cut, let's not make no bones about it, USAID funds have been cut. With less economic aid, more children would be taken out of schools to work in the families, to help support the families. This is going to end their education, the kids' education, and this is going to especially impact the girls.
Contra Costa and Solano Food Bank. First of all, the name's a little bit misgiving because they also support Hawaii during the fires and Los Angeles during those fires. This is sort of a major hub. And so funding for the purchasing assistance has ended, reducing the fresh food, and that'll impact health of the clients. Less food for the clients. The Cal Food program was cut from 62 million to 8 million, 87%. And historically, of course, food bank usage increases during economic struggles.
And let me just point out, this Cal Fresh Food Bank being cut, that's news that just happened 2 weeks ago. That came from the Ag Department. So that's a reduction of over $1 billion across the country, but in California, it's impacted us with this 87% reduction. The extended family program is kind of a new friend of ours. We've only been working with them for a couple of years. They assist recently unhoused and refugee families by providing basic household items here in Contra Costa County. They're expecting reductions in the refugee referrals, as was referred to in a previous slide, but they will continue to support unhoused referrals from Shelter Inc., Veterans Administration, and Winter Nights. They were expecting 10 apartments, to furnish 10 apartments for refugees in 2025. So that's been cut. They did, as Juanita said, CSW, Church World Services, lost funding from the federal refugee resettlement program after 4 families arrived. The 4 families arrived, the money didn't. So EFP went into their own pockets to pay for the bed and the beddings that normally would be funded from the federal government through the refugee resettlement program. So these funds that they came up with were unbudgeted. So they've spent over half their budget this year, and here we are, not even 3 months into the year, over the half their budget has been spent without the foresight of what it was going to be spent for. So they are significantly impacted by all this.
Hope Solutions. This is in Pleasant Hill, and they work on homelessness. Wait a minute, you know what I mean. And housing support. They are building the small houses. They just put up 6 in Walnut Creek by Rossmore. So 80% of the funding is from different levels of the government. So right now they're kind of not sure what's happening, but as HUD offices are targeted to close, they know the trickle down will be that they'll have reduced funding. And then the tariffs are starting, and so for instance they were building homeless shelters for youth in Pittsburgh, and the costs have already gone up in just the last few weeks, 3.5% for lumber. So the other thing that's affecting these folks at Hope Solutions is people that normally offer grants are telling them, you know, we're going to cut back because based on the economic situation, we're not sure, you know, what's your 401k doing? What if I'm a grantor? What do I have to give? So they're not sure about what they're going to be giving, and they kind of budget towards what they had thought they would be getting.
Kapnick Trust, they've been focused since their inception of reducing HIV in Zimbabwe. So they received a letter, of which we have a copy of the letter, and you want to see how U.S. government writes their letters, you're welcome to a copy of it. They received this letter stating that their contracts have been terminated. So they have not received a dime in the past 2 or 3 weeks. So all testing and treatment for diseases that they have conducted has stopped. And what is that? That translates that back in 2024, Kapnick, that only serves 2 out of the 21 provinces in Zimbabwe. In those 2 provinces, they tested last year 135,000 people for AIDS. 12,000 of those 135 are now in treatment. That stopped. That's not going to happen anymore. They tested 195,000 people for TB. 3,500 are now in treatment. Again, that stopped. That's last year's numbers. Those numbers are going to be 0 going forward. And what we've learned is that if you're HIV positive, you're more likely to have cervical cancer. So a couple of years ago in Kapnick, they started testing women for cervical cancer. Last year, they tested 29,000 women for cervical cancer. Of those tested, 900 last year got started into treatment. Again, that stopped for this year. To add insult to injury, in the country of Zimbabwe, they're very low in the in-stock position of TB preventive medicines, especially drug-resistant medicines. And that's critical because, as you may know, TB gets transmitted via airplanes. And as I say in the last slide here, diseases don't know political boundaries. So with the increase in TB in Zimbabwe, it's going to spread. It's going to spread rapidly. I was in a meeting yesterday where there's a community health person who stated that we're already seeing deaths in Zimbabwe due to AIDS, due to not getting treatment in just these past 2 weeks. They are estimating that in sub-Saharan Africa, we will have an increase of 1 million deaths due to AIDS in the next 12 months because of USAID funding. That's not only Zimbabwe, but that's all sub-Saharan countries. Again, 1 million.
I might add that the cost of the HIV treatment is 12 cents per day. Monument Crisis Center. They provide food, education, referrals for at-risk, low-income families. There's rumors that ICE agents are coming to food banks, so they have a big food bank at Monument Crisis Center. So people are nervous to pick up food. And the funding from the state and cities, it's a big concern. So 51% of MCC's funding comes from individuals, which is wonderful. That's better than most nonprofits. But commodity foodstuffs are going to be cut off, and the food bank's going to be in jeopardy. And that's going to impact the agriculture industry, obviously. So we're also concerned at Monument Crisis about them ending SNAP, which is the former food stamp program.
Stand operates here in Contra Costa County, breaking the multi-generational cycle of family violence. They are feeling a great deal of pressure right now from the constantly shifting landscape of funding. They've had several private foundations come to them and said that they are changing their priorities away from domestic violence, more into women's health concerns. So they're still giving money, but not money that the Stand people can access. They are also expecting federal funds to drastically be reduced, if not completely eliminated. One of the reasons they're expecting this is that in 2024, the federal government decided to stop helping victims of crime. Now, the state of California, in hearing this, ponied up, and the state of California came up with the money that the federal government had been giving recently. So people at Stand are very worried that coming into the next budget year, 25-26, not only will they get this expected decrease from the federal government, but they're worried that California cannot continue to fund what the federal government had. So it's going to be a double whammy to them. So again, the bottom line, and I think the bottom line in all these organizations is that if Stand's budget is cut, staff will have to be reduced. I didn't say this in Capnick Trust. We're laying off 75% of our people in Capnick Trust because of the cutback. So we'll see a reduction in staff, and services will be a bare minimum. So that's what we're faced with. This ends the 9 we have up here. With that, I would just like to say, who's got a question?
What are the possibilities of some of these organizations where people are not continue to be employed to take volunteers?
The question is, are these people ready to take on volunteers? You're preempting our last slide. Everybody needs volunteers.
Yeah. I'm Sandy Ducey, and I'm the liaison to the food bank. And the food bank, I think along with Monument Crisis Center, operates greatly on volunteers, and they will continue to need more volunteers as they have to lay off people. They will continue to work and serve the food, push out the food that they have access to. It's just going to be cut drastically. And so we all need to, know their websites and go on. It's the food bank's open 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. You can go there and help package up, their food, which is kind of a fun thing to do, actually. But I think the volunteers are still going to be very needed more and more. So don't think that they won't, but we'll keep you appraised of it.
You mentioned the looking for volunteers. The Monument Crisis Center not only takes volunteers for sorting food before it's handed out each day, but we also have need of tutors to work with the after-school cafe that we put on for about 75 elementary and junior high students. Most of those, we have tutors coming in from the high schools. It's almost one-on-one, but we can do that. We need people for teaching English language classes. We have a lot of people that are coming in and trying to learn English. There's a lot of other things, reception and just working with other groups. So,
in that case, we've heard a lot about fear of the immigrants afraid to go to grocery stores. Are we getting less immigrants showing up at the food banks because of fear of ICE?
Yeah, so the question, let me repeat it, we didn't have a mic, is there a fear from immigrants that they don't show up at food pantries to receive the free food for fear that they'll be captured by ICE? So that was directed both to Jim and Sandy, if you want to address that.
Is there a drop-off in people
Yes,
coming?
we asked the food bank that specifically, and they said, yes, they have seen a drop-off. And then they have more inquiries about how can you help us? We're afraid. Can you give us any legal information, so on and so forth, to protect ourselves? So well, maybe a decrease in them coming to get food, they need information.
No, we had, at the Monument Crisis Center, we had probably a drop-off of about 30% for that first week, 2 weeks. But we're back to 1,000 families a week.
I would just add that through our presbytery, we support a Portuguese-speaking community in San Mateo. And they have seen a major drop-off of the people coming to their food pantry. During the pandemic, many of their members moved over here to Contra Costa County, so they were actually driving over here to do house deliveries of their food bank. So we've put them in touch with Monument Crisis Center, hopefully saving that. But that's how scared they are, that a lot of these food banks are saying, we will home deliver at this point. Another reason why we could use volunteers. Another question.
And don't forget, everybody in this room can drop off stuff, food stuff, at the barrels. It's not a trash container, as some people feel, but it is. I take that out every Monday.
Each barrel is about 200, weighs about 200 pounds. And we go through that in about 6 minutes.
Any other questions or concerns? Yes.
I work for a community health organization in Seattle, and we found that taking food to our clients' homes, obviously our population is mainly Latino. They won't open the door because they're afraid that ICE is at the door. Even though you can maybe see them or call them and they're there, but they absolutely will not open the door. So you most likely would leave it on the porch.
That was for those who didn't hear, that was a comment that in other places people don't even open their doors when you go to drop these off because they're so afraid of ICE being on the other side of the door. Is that a good, fair summary? Any other question or concerns?
I should say that Church World Services reported that the high school in the area over in Concord has already had ICE come 3 times.
I saw a hand over here. Yes, Ian.
Well, that begs the question, what is the attitude of what's the policy towards illegal immigrants?
That the question is, what is the policy toward illegal immigrants? Are you asking what the federal policy is, or are you asking the church's policy? Well, that goes to this last point about the churches. We have a policy here about advocacy. And one of the things, so we do not have a policy right now about illegal or legal immigrants, but we think we should be starting something about what can we do to support the people that need support. One of the difficult questions is that what is an illegal immigrant? I mean, I come over here on a temporary status, and then all of a sudden the government pulls my temporary status. So for 197 days, I've been here legally. On the 198th day, all of a sudden I'm illegal? I mean, I'm getting my values in there, but I think that's a big question about what is illegal and what is legal. So, other questions? Yes.
I was wondering what the Mount Diablo district, I'm a retired educator, but I wonder, Meadow Homes is right there, and a lot of families. I wondered if some of the distribution, I don't know, we'd have to go through the district on that. Could be distributed, or whether that's bringing in a whole different scenario, I guess.
So the Monument Crisis Center deals, that whole monument corridor these are our clients of ours.
The question was specifically about the Mount Diablo School District, and that there a lot of the incoming immigrants are coming to that area, and what is Mount Diablo? I'm sorry.
Specifically Meadow Homes.
Specifically Meadow Homes, which
Is predominantly Hispanic.
Yes, it is. I would just say that the Mount Diablo School District is focusing a lot of the immigrants into one of the senior highs, so they can do English as a second language, so they can concentrate that. So one of the issues is, how do you register these people that don't speak English, and how do you make sure that they are getting what the services they need? As you may know, there might be several different dialects, especially when we talk about Afghanistan's and other countries too. But Mount Diablo School District, like the Oakland School District has started an international high school that if you're coming with very little limited English skills, you go to the international high school, and they're set up there to help you make your way into the United States. Some great success stories on that.
Well, Meadow Homes was elementary. I don't know if they're taking those elementary children to the high school.
They are.
I don't know.
We actually, I I taught at Oak Grove Middle School. So we are working with the schools, as is the food bank, in delivering food to the schools to provide free and or reduced meals in the morning and noontime for the kids. Our after-school cafe is 75 kids, and it's predominantly kids from the Monument Corridor.
Quick question. Having an international school with immigrant children who can't speak English, does that not make them a target for ICE?
Well, you present an issue that's come up in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I don't know about the Mount Diablo schools, but I know in Oakland, they think the trade-off is worth it. And so they're still supporting that. But these are questions that are being asked right now, and maybe the answer will evolve. I know of a statewide meeting that's coming up in the 1st of April where this will be discussed at the state level as the state of California is giving money out to these different school districts and how to support the immigrant community.
That goes exactly to my question. So with respect to advocacy and at the state level, obviously not international, but I was just curious, as we reach out to our elected officials and try and carry that word to that kind of decision-making, are funds mostly being itemized or identified in the governor's general budget and his budget, or are there specific funds in bonds and the like that have already been designated that we would advocate to make sure that they're being spent in that fashion? How specific can we get about state funding towards these concerns?
I don't have an answer to that, but I'll get you one. I think this meeting in April 8th and 9th in Sacramento will determine a lot of that. Again, a lot of this stuff is just happening. We're trying to figure out what our response is. But as a lot of these slides point out, there's a lot of concern about the economy. And just as one of the slides said that their funders are saying, I can't commit for a 2-year funding cycle to you because I don't know what's happening to my endowment fund. So I think the state's also worried about its revenues, given the uncertainty in the economic situation here. So
Aren't there bond funds that are already presented?
Yeah, I know they're educational bond funds. I don't know in what detail they're committed.
Chris, LOPC's been a big supporter for years with Fallen Up. Is there anything the church can do to continue support for Fallen Up?
Oh, absolutely. We have fundraising campaigns here. We had a successful one recently, and advocating with our representatives to change the policy, to refund UN refugee funding to them is a lifeline to them, and the U.S. is alone on this. All of the other countries have resumed funding the UN refugee program, and the U.S. is the only one still withholding funds. And also AID, again, contact our representatives and Congress people and make sure that they push this through at the legislative level. Yeah.
In regards to the ICE situation, I know that a lot of the nonprofits are starting to run Know Your Rights seminars, and so some of them have suggested that perhaps we would support those little seminars by bringing them lunch when they have that kind of a meeting, and doing things like that. So those are some things we might consider doing that are more on the ground and local.
You have a question back there?
Just for clarification, the handouts or that you talked about, that was for connection with legislators? Is that what you're
Yes. So go ahead.
So I'm just, where are we in terms of, that's individual connection, in terms of providing a united voice to support this? And what the church is committed to? It seems consistent that there would be a united voice, that we've decided in the past this is what we're asked to do. Where are we?
So the question, for those who didn't hear it, is that the literature that we have is for you to do individual action about writing your congressman. The question is, what are we doing collectively from LOPC? So I would just say that I think the session, who is our elected representatives, as a body has to agree on what we need to do. So we have many people here in this room on the session. We even have the clerk of the session with us up here. So I think we hear that. I think at some point we have to add to our agenda on the session about what can we do collectively. So I know I'm committed, and I see some other session members that maybe we can pass around some sort of action plan and see what we can do. But I would tell you, as you see elders in the church, and hopefully we're all remembering to wear our elder badges, tell them what you think about this, because we are, I mean, this is the Presbyterian Church, and somebody who's gone to school about Presbyterian churches can say something about we work in an elected, we're a democracy. Yes?
I just wonder if you repeat what you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The denomination's going to do.
Repeating what I just heard is that we are a democracy, a matter of fact, the government, but what we're going to hear next week is some representatives from PC USA on what actions have been taken by the Presbyterian Church USA in terms of the Gaza Strip. And going back to 2024, the General Assembly, which is our Congress, or I don't know what passed some rules that said this is the Presbyterian stance on the Palestinian Gaza Strip. Is that a fair summary?
Yeah. How about the lawsuit?
How about the lawsuit? So for those who may not know, just recently, like in the past month, I guess a little bit more than a month. February 12th. Actually, that was the date of the lawsuit. Preceding the lawsuit, in an evangelical church in Atlanta, there was a recent immigrant with his family worshiping in the church with an ankle bracelet because he had come into the United States seeking refuge. He was an asylum seeker. He did the proper things. They said, okay, your case is now logged in, and come back for your court dates, come back for other things. He's made all the things that he was supposed to do. He's sitting in church on a Sunday, and ICE arrives at the church. So the ushers see ICE arrive at the church. They lock the doors to the church, keeping ICE from coming into the church. ICE proceeds to come into the church. It's not enumerated in the lawsuit how that happened, but ICE came into the church and arrested this person. They did not have a warrant. They didn't know his name. They arrested him because he had an ankle bracelet, and he was guilty by association of his ankle bracelet. So, and I'm not a lawyer, so tell me if I'm summarizing this incorrectly. So the Presbyterian Church, along with about 12 other denominations, 27 denominations, has sued on behalf of this individual, saying ICE had no right to do any of this, and we're taking him to court. And I said I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal scholar, but this is the first time I've ever heard the Presbyterian Church going to court. So here is a conflict between church and state right there. So.
It's probably not the first time that Presbyterians, but it's also a multi-faith coalition of churches and temples, and so it's an interfaith group suing, and there's been for a long time this policy of not having immigration go to churches, schools, and several other areas, and that's been abrogated recently, and that's why we're suing.
Hal, you had a question?
Thank you. For several years, I've done a study personally on funding for charities, and what I've noticed is that more and more of the money that the charities get is from the government, whether it's local, state, or federal. And in many cases, it may be up to 70-80% of their total funding for the organizations coming from the government. And I think that's our main concern here, is the funding is changing. So,
yep.
So like Monument Crisis Center, which Jim just mentioned, 51% of your funds are coming
from individuals.
So it's mainly from individuals.
Well, we do get federal fund commodities. We get commodities that is filtered through the food bank. the equivalent of $1 million a year.
Yeah. So this is, we're all gonna have to give more money, the government's gonna give less.
Yeah, and I would just add, I saw recently that a poll had been taken to the citizens of the United States asking, this poll was taken 2 years ago, how much money do you think the federal government hands out in foreign aid? And this is, foreign aid. So the average citizen reports 26% of the federal budget goes to foreign aid. In fact, it's less than 1%. And that includes a lot of military aid. So by the federal government saying that we're saving money by cutting this aid off, there's an expression I don't want to use, but I'm in a church. So any other questions or thoughts? Yes?
I just wanted to say that the projects for the Know Your Rights, that is extremely important for all of the non-documented individuals, and it's really important for LOPC to understand just exactly what that is. The Know Your Rights, they provide a card in multiple languages. It's called a red card. Non-documented immigrants can carry that with them. If they're stopped, they can read what's on the back. It protects their Fourth Amendment, their Fifth Amendment. They don't have to speak to the officers. And as far as they're coming into the church, without a warrant signed by a judge, they cannot come into the property. So those are two really important things, the red card and the warrant. If the warrant is not signed by a judge, it is not legal and they cannot enter.
I don't know if that needs to be repeated. So the Know Your Rights has been reduced in many cases to a card with many different languages that we're asking immigrants to have, so we need to pass those out. There's several organizations in Contra Costa County that is doing that, and I can give you those names if you want to help pass them out. But we want to have all immigrants have this Know Your Rights, so if they're ever stopped, they have something in their own language they can read back to the ICE agent. And without a signed warrant by a judge, they can't enter a property, whether it's a church or whether it's your home or whether it's a hospital. And that's one of the issues that's being litigated in this lawsuit. Yes?
I basically have a request. I think that we need a better website and that each one of these major groups that we support should also have a little page on this basically mission website so that news can be posted, volunteer opportunities can be included if the people want to sign up for them. And so basically that's a request to session to approve, to work on what I consider a better website.
I can answer that. We are working on that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, we are.
Yes, it's true. We're working on that. Yeah.
Sue, go.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So I know we're bouncing back and forth, international, local, and I wanted to speak to the global health programs and funding and the cuts by the U.S. in USAID. And I heard an interview with one of the former directors just recently out of USAID, and they are suggesting we need to be prepared for polyepidemics because vaccination money has been cut, and they anticipate if there's no change in the funding, there will be 1 million additional deaths unnecessary because of lack of vaccinations that would normally be provided without charge for low-income countries. And for the African Congo and Zimbabwe for malaria, without the funding for vaccines and treatment for malaria, they estimate there will be 100,000 more deaths per year from malaria. So just trying to keep a balance between our concerns for domestic and international. We're not safe if the rest of the countries and the people are not safe from disease. And so I'd like to raise that as something to also advocate for.
Thank you very much.
I think we're going to have to just do a few more questions. I want to be sure that everybody understands that we've got these pads going around with sign-up sheets so that you can let us know whether you want information electronically. You can cut and paste a letter or whatever, but make sure you sign that, and we'll have a few more questions.
You know, I know this is difficult for Presbyterians who do things orderly, but the illegal actions that happen from our federal government, and not just these policy concerns or budgetary actions, but the illegal activities that they perform at churches and schools and every place, the detentions they do requires a little more action than just necessarily talking to our congressman. We were at a protest, in Walnut Creek on Saturday, carrying signs to say, "Stop it." And I don't know the effect it has, but it's got to be more than what we're doing correctly and in order. So.
Thank you, Ralph. Did everybody hear that?
Yes. This is more of a comment, and I agree with what was just said. But again, I think assessing the audience who are we speaking to, locally, there's likely a lot of alignment around these issues, and including with your elected officials. And I would just suggest, instead of everybody being able to hit the street, being able to bring into this wonderful church folks like Mark Dussaulnier or Rebecca Bauer-Cahan to actually speak to this congregation and those that you might invite, so that folks have a more direct influence and voice to those elected officials, or Eric Swalwell or whomever, that then are sent out to DC or working with the state in terms of budgetary considerations and what bonds are already restricted. That's another way of making a much more personal connection than all the letter writing, which is great, but I think you have enough energy here that having local representatives appear, not to harass them, but really to have that kind of energized conversation would be great.
Thank you. I promised Sandy a word.
I know, I just want to make a statement. I'm going back to what Ian asked. What's our position on illegal immigrants? Peter defined that well in his sermon today. We are our neighbor's keeper. We don't ask where they came from or what are their papers when they come to the Monument Crisis Center or anything. They are our neighbor, and we need to help them. We're not asking them to come over the border. We don't have anything like that. We're just helping people. And it's a cascading. If the food bank can't get the food, the farmers can't sell it to us, it goes all down the chain. So it's bigger than sometimes we can even realize.
Thank you. We're at 12. You're standing, I'll give you the last word.
I always stand up. One of the most important things any individual can do is write a letter. You write a letter to your congressman, you write a letter to the president, to the vice president. Every letter, not necessarily email, but letter that is received. In Washington, D.C., the old adage used to say you represent 10,000 people. Now, I'm saying that having been an elected official in this area. That's how important those, and lobbying, I did lobbying too. That's why those letters are so important. It is one thing every individual can do themselves. Take the time, write the letter. Their addresses are on the internet. Do their name. Now, you can't write somebody else's person. You can, but write your own representative. I mean, somebody that represents someone else is not going to read your letter. I call them.
Thank you. We've moved into our last and final slide, and that is, what can we do? And we just talked about express your concerns to your representatives. And as I said before, we have three suggestions. One, to tell Congress to reinstate funding for the UN Refugee Association. So here is a template if you chose to follow it. And on the back side are the representatives' snail mail address. And if you want to do it through email, we've got that. And they also have phone numbers. Be prepared on a phone number that is not a very long phone number that you probably won't be able to read all this. One for restoring aid to the UN, one for the red one for U.S. aid for global health initiatives. So this is the Congo, this is the Zimbabwe, this is the Gaza Strip also. And the green one is to tell Congress today to protect federal programs to support the vulnerable. So this is the domestic one. Again, we've given you some short boilerplate. Use it, modify it, addresses, names, snail mail, phone numbers, all on the back. Phones are easy to do, but you may get cut off. That's the only, we've tested it, and you do get cut off.
Did you want to say anything?
And for those that want to see the example of the letter that the Kaepernick Trust received saying we're no longer funding you, this is a copy of the letter. We have these out there. If you want to, we said you can't mail other people's congressmen because they won't read it. But you know what? There's an old-fashioned thing of Christmas card lists that go to other districts. So I would suggest dust off your Christmas card list. Tell your friends how you feel about this and maybe asking them to write their representatives so we can get a bigger voice in there. So let's see what we can do about spreading the word. Continue or even increase your donations. Everybody's looking for more food. You heard how the food bank's hurting. I made the suggestion of let's grow victory gardens and give some of the food that we grow to these people that aren't getting the fresh food this summer. Juanita talked about clothing hygiene kits. Another suggestion, when buying groceries, buy some for the food bank or MCC. As we can always get another barrel. That's not a problem. So more of that. Volunteer your time. Somebody said, are they ready for volunteers? Local partners need hands, even ones not impacted by government programs. And so Steve was very generous in passing on to me a letter email from the STAND people that here, STAND's very protective of their people, as you might imagine. I mean, this is violence. They don't want unknown people showing up, but they're looking for volunteers. Now, you have to be screened, but they've put out, we need volunteers. So if you're so inclined, beat a path to his door. And speak to any of the mission liaison members for other suggestions. So I thank you for your time. We're a little bit late. We do have other handouts there, specifically for MCC, CWS, and I'm leaving one out. I don't know. Check out the table.
Monument. Yeah, thank you.